What's going on? This is me recording a new intro to the original version of Genesis 1 that I never released, because in talking with some of our young people who are heading back to school, understand that this is that time of year. One mentioned the fact that they have a professor who is teaching the Bible, but not from a Christian perspective. And so as I considered some questions about Genesis 1, this is an approach. It's a little bit different than the one I take now, where I look closely at the chapter, but because this looked at a few questions regarding creation, I thought it might help those who are dealing with similar issues, being believers, dealing with questions from non-believers regarding the Bible, especially in your college years as you're dealing with friends and professors who raise questions. Hoping, as I say toward the end of the video, to spark a conversation that we can have respectfully. Either way, as we usually say, God's best to you as you go forward with him.
All right, Genesis 1, let's call it manuscripts, heads, and hearts. First of all, though, why manuscripts? Well, manuscripts because not too long ago, I got the chance to see George Orwell's handwritten revisions to the manuscript for 1984, his book that would go on to be considered by many a masterpiece. And I'm not sure why it surprised me, but seeing the amount of revision that went into him perfecting the rough draft for 1984 surprised me. And it made me think back to Genesis 1 and wonder, where's the evidence of a rough draft of us? I mean, 1984 is an awesome book, but it's just a book. It doesn't walk, it doesn't talk, it doesn't reproduce. And as unsophisticated as people can seem at times, we do all those things. So the most sophisticated book is still less sophisticated than the least sophisticated of us. Yet there's more evidence of rough draft in a book like 1984 than finished draft, but not so much us. You see, for us and your pet, or pretty much any life form you can think of here on this earth, there's actually less revision or evidence of a revision of you or any of those life forms than there is finished draft. And that just didn't seem to make sense after a while. I mean, nature never got it wrong, really. There was no period where it had to perfect digestion or reproduction or respiration. It made me wonder, if it did have to perfect those things, could we have ever really reached the second evolutionary generation at all? Anyway, it made me think too. The second thing I mentioned, heads, not so much physical heads, but Talking Heads, the group fronted by lead singer David Byrne, a skinny guy famous for hopping around stage in oversized suits that just didn't fit. And once again, it made me think back to Genesis 1 and wonder, where's the evidence that we ever evolved into a fit with this environment? I mean, lungs are great, but what good are lungs if they aren't a fit with the atmosphere? Likewise, gills are impressive, but what good are gills if they don't fit with seawater? And then, likewise, most life forms are equipped with a digestive tract, but what good is digestion if it doesn't fit with vegetation or the available nutrition? And again, it made me wonder, if none of those things fit in the first evolutionary generation, how did we ever reach a second? Which led me to think of the third thing I mentioned, and those are hearts. Which raised one last question for me, at least at this point, and that's, at what point did we evolve involuntary functions like heartbeats and respiration? I mean, sleep deprivation is considered a torture technique because life just doesn't function well without rest. And so if we didn't begin functional in a fit with the environment, with involuntarily functioning systems, how did we ever reach a second evolutionary generation? And I raise these questions not to be contentious or start a debate. There's enough of that, and there's enough of it that's going on with all kinds of rancor and disrespect. But I do want to honestly provoke a discussion. So feel free to comment down below in the comment section, especially if you have training in evolutionary biology or just some insights you want to share. But if Einstein could consider questions like this and come to the conclusion that there was a creator, I'm not sure there's an atheist or an agnostic alive who can credibly condescend to those who believe in God. But likewise, if C.S. Lewis could pass through his own period of atheism and become a Christian thinker who almost always seemed to respect non-believers, I'm not sure there's a Christian alive who can credibly condescend to those who don't believe. So please, candidly discuss these questions, but do it with respect, because disrespect is way too easy nowadays. God willing, tomorrow, Genesis 2.